All right, everybody. So, there's been an update in the world of cops and cop body cam footage. It feels like every week now we're getting some insane viral footage from cop body cam. It really is the perfect reason, like, just showing itself why we need cops to have body cams. There's literally no downside to the accountability that comes with it, unless you think that, like, cops should have the right to get away with things they shouldn't, and not be surveilled while on duty in public. Like, a very bizarre argument from the people who argued against the cop body cams, but I feel as though them now being mandatory across most of America means that we've gotten some of the best evidence for why they were necessary going viral every week. Now, last week, the big story was actually very, very funny. Primarily because the individual who could have gotten hurt or killed did not get hurt or killed. Did not even take a single bullet, from what I learned. Now, when I covered the story before, I left out some critical info that had not yet been published because the story was still so fresh. So I'll go ahead and give you guys a follow-up on that story before we get to what I'm about to talk about. We're talking about the cop who heard an acorn hit his squad car after falling from a tree, heard the pop, imagined a gunshot, thought it was a gunshot noise, imagined a gunshot wound hitting him, proceeded to fall to the ground, into the street, and crawl in the street like he's paralyzed from the chest down, screaming, I'm hit! I'm hit! While mag dumping the police car he was walking past multiple times. His partner then, of course, obviously believing her partner has been hit, starts unloading on the cop car too. Because let's be real, okay? Imagine you are that lady cop, okay? Your partner has just yelled, I'm hit! And fallen to the ground and is now dragging himself in the street like he's paralyzed. And he is now, with whatever strength he seems to have, unloading rounds into your own squad car, saying, shots fired, shots fired. I do not fault that lady cop for pulling out her gun and shooting too, but that male cop who had that fucking acorn hit the top of the car and freaked out over it, absolutely ridiculous. I am so glad he has become a national embarrassment, a world embarrassment. He will never live that down. I'm so glad his name is published, and yeah, fantastic. Regardless, for those who don't know, there was a guy in the squad car. They'd already searched him, cuffed him, and put him in the back of the car. They were picking him up for something very mild, like maybe, like, I don't know, like not paying child support, like something very mild, like nothing violent, nothing even like warranting a thought that this person might have a gun and try to like shoot at cops to keep themselves from getting arrested. Like they're going to spend like a night in jail is like what they've got waiting for them. And he had just put the guy in the squad car, already searched him, knew like there was no gun, there was no weapons, he was handcuffed in the back of the cop car. Then the acorn hits the top of a nearby car, not even the squad car, but a nearby car. He thinks that's a gunshot, assumes it must be from the handcuffed guy in the back of the police car, and unloads into the police car. Thankfully, I was right in my assumption that the police car would be made to be somewhat or quite resistant against 9mm rounds, because the guy did not get hit a single time. They unloaded into where that guy was in the back of that cop car, multiple magazines from both of their guns. At least 30 rounds each. Like, I would hazard to say 60 rounds minimum were fired into that cop car. Not a single one hit him. Either miracle or I was right about the cop car thankfully protecting the guy. So, holy shit. However, that story, very good example of the way that American cops are just way too goddamn jumpy. Well, we've got a new example. And this time, it was with a lady cop. Now, as you can imagine, pretty much nobody, certainly not anybody on the right, used last week's story about the acorn cop as an argument for why male cops are somehow inferior at their jobs than female cops. No one made that argument. The case of gender never came up at a single point in any of the criticism of the male cop who shot up that police car last week. We're about to see a effectively, well, not technically identical, but quite similar situation occur in which a female cop does something very, very much the same. And the response online? Pretty much overwhelmingly calling for the banning of women from being police officers. From all of blue checkmark Twitter, the mass call for the banning of women from being cops. It's really interesting, the double standard, huh? Like, guy does the exact same thing. Well, this doesn't reflect poorly on men. That guy's just one dumbass. But a woman does something, like, badly, and all of a sudden, this is a reflection on all women and how they lack the capacity to do things as well as men. I was watching... Okay, once again, I feel like I bring up this podcast often. I almost feel like it makes me look bad to watch the podcast to, like, lefties who would judge me for that kind of thing, but I don't care. I almost, like, hate watching it at this point. But the PKA podcast, that podcast with the three middle-aged white dudes in glasses, except for Kyle, who have been rich for decades and do not have any tangible relation to the average, American's life. They're very conservative, right? And they, in a clip that I watched last night, literally went on a rant about how the reason why men are biologically better at everything than women is because that if you're a man and you aren't useful for something going back, millions of years ago, then you were completely useless. You had to be really good at something, or you would just be cast out, or you would be killed. And it's just this, like, three middle-aged dude bros pulling shit out of their ass and making stuff up to justify being misogynistic. Like, that is how these people think, even outside of the super radically far-right spaces. These guys are not super radically far-right. These guys are just retarded, normie griller types, except for Taylor. And that is the way that they think. It's a really good piece of insight into the double standard that men have for women. When a man does something bad, so many guys just see it as that guy's an asshole. When a woman does something bad, so many guys turn that in their head into women are bitches. What can I say? We're about to see an example of that same thought process happening right here and now. Actually, I gotta stop the music first, otherwise we're gonna have hightail lo-fi playing over this video. Nobody dies in this video. Nobody even gets shot in this video, for the record. The woman who is... I guess I'll give you backstory. Cops did... Actually, here. Let me read the caption. Woman approached her front door with a gun in hand, unaware what would happen next. Now, for those of you guys that don't know, in America, it is fully goddamn illegal to go to your door and open it with a gun in your hand. You are allowed to have a gun, as long as you own it legally, in your own house. As a matter of fact, you're allowed to have your gun ready, loaded, and, prepared for self-defense on a lethal scale if you hear someone breaking your window or busting your door down. In most states, maybe all states, there might be, I know that, like, New Jersey, it's probably not legal. In most states, it is legal. If you hear, like let's say I'm sitting right here in my streaming room, which is down here in the basement, and I hear a window break upstairs. If I'm home, my gun isn't locked up. If I'm home, my gun's with me, like in the same room as me. If I'm going upstairs to go to sleep, I take my gun upstairs with me and I put it next to me, so if I hear a window break in the middle of the night, it's the first thing I grab. You said illegal? No, I did not. I said it is legal. I might have enunciated a little bit at the beginning of Lee, and that might have made it sound like I said Lee, so that might be my bad. I apologize. But I said legal. It is fully legal in this country. If you hear like a window break, someone kicking down your door, to grab a gun and be ready for someone to come in, and if it's somebody coming in to do harm against you, to shoot them dead on the spot, or at least to shoot them until the threat has been stopped. Usually that's going to be lethal force, but it doesn't always have to be. Sometimes you shoot somebody like to defend yourself, and one shot stops them and doesn't kill them or even hurt them that bad. And it's like, oh, okay, I thought I was going to have to kill somebody. Apparently I don't. That did it. One shot did it. Okay. And they go to the hospital and they survive and they go to jail because of what they tried to do, and you don't have the conscience of a dead person on you. That's the ideal situation if anything horrible like that ever happens. But You are fully in your legal right to shoot until the threat is stopped. That includes until the threat is dead, if that is what it takes. In most states. Obviously, look up whether or not you've got castle doctrine, and, you know, obviously guns have to be legal in your state. You have to possess a gun legally, all that stuff, right? Center mass is where you aim for. I mean, yeah, you aim for where you have the best chance of hitting. Because, you know, you're going to be stressed, your hands are going to be shaking, you're not going to be shooting as well as you do at the range when you take 3 seconds between shots to hit that bullseye every time, when you're in a situation where you got to use that fucking thing. Especially when you've only got, like me, I've got 10 rounds in my mag. That's all my mags can take, 10 rounds. Because I live in Washington. They have a legal limit on how many rounds your gun can have here, and that's 10. Which means effectively I can only load like 8 or 9 rounds in realistically. The 10th round is pretty much impossible to get in there without like a really finicky piece of plastic I have that like lets you get it in a little easier. But yeah, it's those last couple rounds are really hard to put in. So effectively it's like a 7, 8, or 9 round max magazine I have for my Glock, as well as like, you know, chamber. But like, fuck, you know, it really blows how like so many of these guys are going to see this video. They're going to see an example of someone who is legally doing what they need to like defend themselves. Because like this woman in this video, all she knows is that there are scuffs, sounds, and bumps outside her door. The woman who's about to get shot not shot at in the video we're about to see, not shot, but shot at in the video we're about to see. All she knows is she is a woman, maybe living alone, but, you know, at her house, hearing scuffs and noises and boots and talking outside of her front window and door, like right outside, as you can see. If I heard that outside my house, like I'm sitting down here and I start hearing talking out, like by my front door, like outside my front door, I hear talking of multiple people and like walking and stomping and like there's flashlights and shit. I'm going to go for my gun. That is never a good sign. Now, a lot of people say, well, this is why America has a gun problem. You Americans see a threat and you immediately go for a gun. It's like, well, obviously, if we see a threat in our own property, in our own, like, safe space that is our home, and we're in a country where criminals have guns too, because there's more guns than people here, we're going to bank on the idea that the people trying to hurt us have guns, and we do not want to not have guns when they come to hurt us, right? So in this situation, this woman was absolutely, from her perspective, I believe, completely in the right in everything she did. She is legally in the right to go for her gun when she hears unidentified people knocking around outside, but unfortunately for her, the unidentified people knocking around outside, sounding like home robbers or a murder squad or something, were cops. And I don't know if they were doing a no-knock warrant. I don't know if they were just knocking on the door to see if, like, they were going to ask her about something going on in the neighborhood, and they saw she had a gun, and because she was freaked out, and that's what promoted this. I don't know all of the details. I'm going to go ahead and Google it after we watch this clip and find out what's come out so far. This video is not very old yet, so we might not have all the info just yet. But all I've seen so far of this is this video, so I'm excited to actually read the backstory, find out whether or not, like, the cops were even at the right house or something, you know? Like, there's a very good chance that this was way more fucked up than it even seems at surface level. But here is the video of some dumb fuck cops being dumb fucks and shooting Americans that are holding their gun in their home legally, well, shooting at Americans that are holding their guns in their home legally. Like, all the while, the right is going to weaponize this to say women are bad at everything, somehow, when literally a week ago, a guy did something even more embarrassing than this. At least the woman that this lady cop is about to shoot at had a gun in her hands. At least there was another gun in the situation than the one the cops had in this situation. The guy cop got scared by a fucking acorn. This lady got scared by a gun. Neither of them are justified. Neither of them have an excuse. However, I would argue the one that's more inept is the guy who got scared by an acorn falling on a car. Can we agree on that? Personally, that's just my take. I don't want to compare, but still. Saying you don't know that Acorn could have been packing? True, you're not wrong. Anyway, here's the clip. No one gets hurt in this, by the way. No, like, the woman didn't even get shot, I believe. Like, I don't even think she got hit. So, like, no one gets hurt in this video. Oh, good. The reload.
Shot fired.
Gonna continue shooting? Yep, he's gonna continue shooting. Yep. My favorite thing about American cops is when the shooting stops and they continue to shoot. Like, they empty their magazine, and then it's like 5 straight seconds of them fumbling around because cops aren't really that good at shooting. Unironically, cops fucking suck at shooting, dude. Cops are generally not that good. There are some, like, you can tell from the body cam footage when a cop is a good shooter, because you can tell by their gun, okay? If they've just got, like, a really basic, like, standard issue Glock or SIG or something, usually you can bet this guy probably doesn't shoot all that much. This guy's probably not that good with a gun. He's just good enough with a gun. Then you've got the cops who you see the body cam footage of, and it's like, oh, that's an aftermarket slide. That's a $400 optic. Oh, that's like a $50 flashlight attachment. Oh, you got like a fucking is that a compensator? Why you got a compensator on a 9mm? What the fuck? No, I'm just joking there. But like in all jokes aside, like, you can tell by how souped up the cop's gun is how much they tend to shoot and how good they probably are at shooting and how often they do it. Most cops are not rocking that kind of gear. And if they were, then you'd know, because they all have the same general, like, pay. So yeah, like, cops are generally not that good of a shot, especially when they're trying to shoot someone with a 9mm handgun through a wall. And my favorite part is, like, they slowly, like, they're reloading their gun, and then, like, it's taken them like a whole 5 seconds on a single shot has rung out in the time they're reloading their gun. They get the gun reloaded. He's like, watch how much look at the fumbling here. Look how much there's the fumbling on the reload. I get that it's like a stressful situation for them or whatever, but look how much of a fumble there is in the reload here. Wait, that's not even that. Hold on, I rewinded now. Okay, shot. Here's the reload. Shots fired. Oh, she, sorry. Like, literally stops to say shots fired, then finishes fucking chambering around, and then goes bang, 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 bang. Meanwhile, no shots have gone off. Mind you, I've yet to hear a single shot come from inside the house. Gunshots sound differently when they come from inside, by the way, so, like, you know, you'd be able to hear it. Like, they'd sound different than the ones we're hearing, like, overbearingly in the video. They'd sound more like boom, 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 boom. A little bit, like, a little more bassy. The tinniness of a gunshot that gets picked up on video is completely cut out once it's muffled by a building. So you just hear the bassy part of the gunshot. So this is literally just her own shots she's reporting. Like the same thing with fucking Acorn guy screaming shots fired to report their own shots they're firing to get their friends to continue shooting at a place that has yet to, they've received no return fire. Mind you, she's not taken cover. The person she's shooting at has taken cover. This police officer has not taken any cover or concealment. There's two different types of obscuring yourself from a shooter. There is concealment, which is simply putting something in the line of sight of you and the shooter, whether it be just your chest up or just your arm being covered up. However much of your body you can cover up with concealment, it's worth doing. And then there's cover, and that's an actual bullet backstop object that can genuinely prevent rounds from passing through and hitting you, that you can hide behind to some degree and not be shot from. So not only has this cop not taken any form of cover, indicating either A, she's not following her training, because cops are trained to immediately seek concealment or cover if shots are fired. A, not following training. B, probably not that scared for her life by the looks of things. Like, I feel like a cop scared for her life would, step aside a little bit to take cover around the court. Like, assuming it's not more of a banister like this here, you could go to the side to like the corner of the house, right? And shoot from there, or get down a little bit, take some kind of cover, or get some kind of concealment from where you think you're being shot from, supposedly. That's what I'm assuming a justification in her mind for firing these shots, besides just seeing a citizen legally holding a gun in her own home. I just... A lot of people, especially Euro cucks, Australio cucks, and whatnot that are anti-gun, are going to try to argue, well, here in my country that has less guns than people, we don't have this problem. A perfect example of why you Americans just need to let go of your needing guns. You don't need guns for anything. What do you need an AR-15 for? It's always like the same repeated like talking points, Canadians. No, I like Canada's gun policy. Canada's gun policy is based. I don't like that they have some things banned. I think my gun, the Glock 19, might be banned because of some bullshit like technicality with some law, but I might be wrong. It might just be restricted to some permits. But Canada's gun safety policies, there's a difference between gun control and gun safety policies. Like, those are different things. And for me, I feel like gun safety policies are a good thing. Gun control is a bad thing. I don't want limits to what guns people can get. I want to be able to own an M16. I want to be able to shoot full auto. I want to have a tank. I want to have a grenade launcher. I want to have an RPG. I want to have whatever the fuck I want to have gun-wise, as long as I can A, afford it, B, have never committed a crime, C, have no fucking problems with mental health, and D, I just fucking, I don't ever do anything bad with it, and I never end up, like, breaking the law with it. As long as those things are met, I am cool with me and everybody else in America having every type of gun they want to have. How do we achieve this, though? Well, for starters, something has to be done for the amount of illegal guns that are out there in circulation. For those that are unfamiliar, there are millions of illegal guns out there that have been stolen, bought illegally, like sold through straw purchases, I believe the term is for it, like sold through like the gun show loophole, which isn't really so much a loophole and just like doing a private sale outside of a gun show where a lot of gun people tend to go and bring their guns. So like you just buy it from another guy who has a gun in the parking lot. Like there's a lot of illegal, but like untracked, unregistered, unregulated guns that are just out there through that. Yeah, it's just there's so many guns that will be used illegally that are just out there and easy to get for criminals. And while I completely agree with restrictions that keep criminals from buying guns through the general means, like going to a gun store, buying online, like obviously no one with a criminal history should be able to do that, unless it's like, obviously like someone who got arrested 10 years ago for having weed shouldn't be barred from having guns. But like, within reason, I think most crimes should probably preclude you from owning a gun, unless some like, I do think it'd be unfair if there wasn't a way through which somebody who has demonstrated serious improvement and good behavior in society and has actually rehabilitated shouldn't be able to regain their Second Amendment rights. Is self-defense not a right? I disagree with the idea of calling things rights. That's the thing, though. Like saying, is self-defense not a right? Well, like, technically, no. Like, effectively, no. Like, look at this situation. In America, you have the right to defend yourself with a gun. The problem is you don't have the right to defend yourself with a gun from agents of the state. If cops show up and they just have decided they're going to shoot you, like remember that one story of the guy who was eating McDonald's in the car with his girlfriend, sitting in the parking lot of the McDonald's, and a cop pulled in thinking that the car they were in was a stolen car that he was looking for, and without even asking or checking or anything like that, immediately pulled out his gun and began unloading rounds into the driver's area of the car, and just continue, like shot those kids, just shot the crap out of those teenagers, like young 20 or somethings that were just a couple eating some dinner in their car, just unloaded on them. And like they tried to stop at one point to, like, mind you, it's illegal to run away. So like knowing that he can't run away, he tries to stop the car at one point and like yell, please stop, I'm friendly, like, just trying to get him to stop. But when he stops, the cop uses an opportunity to jog up and proceeds to put the gun right up against the window and just starts blasting straight into the guy's like body through the window after the guy stops the car and begins screaming, please stop. The cop was literally just went full psycho. It's a horrifying video. The cop went full psycho and was dead set on murdering those two. Like, was chasing the car down. No shots were returned. Just chasing the fucking car down, unloading shots, reloading, unloading more shots into the passenger seat. Every time, the guy tried to stop 3 separate times to calm down the situation and get the cop to stop shooting. Every time the guy stopped running from the cop used it as an opportunity to get closer and pump more rounds into his body. So you're basically in this position where these agents of the state who have authority to kill you in the moment, like, you can't run away legally. It is illegal to run away. That's evading arrest, even if they're shooting at you under false pretenses and you're not a suspect. You are breaking the law if you run away, even if it saves you, and you are very breaking the law if you pull out your gun and shoot back to defend yourself. So while, yes, you have the right to self-defense in this country, you only have the right to self-defense against another civilian or citizen, if you want to call it that. But like, if it's just if it's a cop or an agent of the state, they fully have the right to kill you. Like, or at least you don't have the right to keep them from killing you. If you survive their attempt to kill you by killing them or hurting them, you're going to prison for a really long time. Which is the big problem here of, yes, you're allowed to defend yourself with your gun in this country, but at the same time, cops are fully allowed to just unload on you if they think you're a threat. You're not allowed to shoot back, and if you run away, there's a good chance you get hit with evading arrest charges. So realistically, the best thing you could do for yourself is to just curl up in a ball and take the bullets and hope you survive. Hope the cop doesn't reload another mag into the gun and start putting more rounds into you, even though you're not shooting back. That's really the basics of it. Your right to self-defense against the police varies from state to state. That doesn't surprise me. I feel like a state like Texas might have more forgiving laws for somebody who defends themselves against wrongful police, lethal force. But what this stands out to me as is not an example of why American citizens having guns is a problem. It stands out to an example to me as why we do not want the state and agents of the state to be the only ones allowed to have guns in this country. Do you really think this is an example of why cops should be the only ones allowed to have guns? And before you say cops shouldn't have guns either, I'm sorry, but there are millions more guns than people in this country. The criminals have the guns. I don't expect American cops to go up against American criminals with tasers and nightsticks and rubber bullets, okay? Like, rubber bullets are not that effective, even. So, like, a lot of the time at stopping somebody when lethal force is necessary. So even then, cops need to have guns in this country. Law enforcement needs to have guns in this country. There are active shooters that happen. Cops need to be able to stop them, and they need guns to do it. And taking the guns away from legally owning gun citizens and cops does not take them away from the criminals. There will still be millions upon millions upon millions more guns in the country than people after that. But the criminals will have them. By definition, the people who will have them will be criminals. And on top of that, when those criminals decide to use said guns, God forbid in a public place, I mean, if nobody has guns but the bad guy, I mean, the bad guy is basically a super villain. Like, you've gone from having, like, a bad guy who might, like, walk into a store and, like, stab a couple people. Now you've got a guy who can walk into a store. I mean, they are, like, shooters already target gun. Here's a perfect example. Where do mass shootings happen the most? Where they are able to cause the most amount of death for the longest amount of time. You're about to list a bunch of gun-free zones, places where it is literally illegal to have a gun unless you're law enforcement. Like, it's not allowed. You're not allowed to have a gun there unless it's law enforcement. These are gun-free zones. The thing is, though, if someone's a criminal and wants to hurt people, they see a gun-free zone and think, perfect. That's what they think. Now, what is an example of a place that is not a gun-free zone that has a large gathering of people that is quite common when it comes to attempts to shoot them up, but said shootings tend to end pretty much instantly? Churches in the South. Churches in the South. There have been countless attempts at mass shootings at churches in the South and churches where people tend to have guns. They end real fucking fast. Who remembers the Big Iron story about the guy? There was like this trench coat wearing mass shooter who walked into a church in Texas with a shotgun, was able to shoot one guy before several people had stood up, all drawing their guns, but the first guy was the one that just from across the fucking building at, I think it was 30 yards, one shot from a 45 headshot took the shooter out before he could shoot a single other person. There are a lot of other examples of situations like that, because if you want to actually do a mass shooting and have it be effective for what a mass shooter would consider effective, you go to a place that is a gun-free zone, like a school or a mall that bans guns, that doesn't let you conceal carry or legally carry a gun, and be a law-abiding citizen with a gun. Because if you go to a place like a church, your mass shooting isn't going to last very long. Like every time a Southern church gets a mass shooting attempt, it ends like instantly. Joel Osteen megachurch was shot up. Hey, do you know how that shooting ended? A guy pulled out a gun and shot the shooter and ended it before the cops could show up. That's how the Joel Osteen megachurch shooting ended. Only 3 dead, several injured, because a guy pulled out a gun and shot the shooter to death, I believe, before the cops could even show up. Like, the cops are always going to have moments of response time, which is always going to be potentially dozens or hundreds of dead people, depending on the gun used. I mean, fucking hell, hundreds would be crazy. But regardless, it's going to mean a lot of dead people. If a legal citizen in a mall suddenly sees someone pull out a gun and just unloading on random people, and they're allowed to just pull out their gun and end the shooting right then and there before the cops have even been called, yeah, it's probably better than just disarming everybody and the criminals being the only one with guns. This is an example of why Americans should be the ones able to defend themselves and not needing to call these guys, the fucking cops, whenever something goes wrong and they defend themselves in the moment. Because the cops do not really have my trust, personally. And they shouldn't have yours. Justin loads a whole other magazine into the fucking wall. And she's shooting a wall, by the way. She's shooting a drywall wall as well with a 9mm handgun. Like, I don't know. The reason why I'm pretty sure she didn't hit the lady inside is because I'm pretty sure she's hitting studs right now. You can see the, here, watch very closely. Watch very closely when the bullets hit the wall. See that? See those sparks? You see the sparks coming from the wall, right? She's hitting a stud. Most of these shots are hitting studs. That's why they're plinking. I guarantee you most of these shots are hitting studs and they're going in at a diagonal, so they're getting stopped. 9mm can get stopped by like like plywood. So it's like, you know, if it goes through something and then goes through some plywood, the plywood can stop it or at least slow it down enough to just kind of pit her out. So like it makes sense that the lady was safe. Like the lady took better cover than these cops are. They just continue to shoot. Jesus Christ. They load more mags and just continue to unload. No, that wasn't muzzle flash. That was a spark coming out of the wall. The type of drywall that like these houses are made of have like a little wire mesh underneath the plaster to keep the wall plaster from just cracking off and falling. It's like a mesh of wire, and like the copper hitting that can make sparks. We gotta take cover! We gotta take cover! Jesus Christ. So, all 3 of the cops were women in this situation, so as you can imagine, the right decided to weaponize this. Details, this happened in Northeast Houston. Of course, the victim was a black woman. The woman who they shot at was, of course, a black woman. Obviously, race played a factor. And all 3 of them were white women cops. This happened in Northeast Houston at the Pines of Wood Forest apartment complex around 2 a.m. on February 3rd. Harris County Sheriff's Office deputies responding to a different call within the same complex fired dozens of rounds into an apartment resident, LaRonda Berry, who had broken Berry's apartment window to gain entry after losing their key, which had led a neighbor to alert deputies. She had gotten locked out of her own house, and they shot her because they thought she was breaking in, but it was her own house. I guess? Body camera footage released after demands from community leaders and families shows deputies peeking through the broken window and opening fire when they saw Pouncey approaching the door with a illegally owned handgun. Oh, no. A different neighbor had broken into her house, or a different neighbor had broken into their own house, and another neighbor called that in because they just saw someone breaking into their own house, or breaking into a house, and didn't know it was like them breaking into their own house because they locked their keys inside. The cops came, saw a completely different apartment that wasn't related to this, where the woman who got shot at had her gun legally, and they proceeded to shoot at her. Body cameras released after demands from community leaders and families shows deputies peeking through the broken window and opening fire when they saw Pouncey approaching the door with a legally owned handgun. Wait, no, okay, wait, hold on. Why is this so fucking confusing? Why is this worded in such a batshit way? So the broken window house is the one that they shot at. Okay. So the person who got into their house via breaking a window because they locked themselves out. It happens, it's the worst case scenario is having to break your own window to get into your house. But, it's not illegal to have to break into your own house because you locked your keys in. But the cops came and they immediately decided we're going to shoot first and ask questions later. Body camera footage released after demands from community leaders and families shows deputies peeking through the broken window and opening fire when they saw Pouncey approaching the door with a legally owned handgun, hitting her 5 times. Oh, they did hit her. Fuck, I didn't know that. The incident, which left the home riddled with bullet holes, has sparked outrage, with Berry stating the only crime that was committed that day was done by the police. The deputies involved have been placed on administrative leave. They're getting paid leave. They're getting a paid vacation. Administrative leave pending investigation by the Sheriff's Office and the Harris County District Attorney's Office. Civil rights attorney Ben Crump, on this representing Pouncey, criticized the deputies' actions and compared the incident to the fatal shooting of Breonna Taylor in 2020. Okay, to be fair, though, Breonna Taylor didn't even have a gun. Breonna Taylor was like walking down the hallway to see what was up and then got shot. It is a misnomer and misinfo that she got shot while sleeping in her bed, by the way. She had gotten up and like walked to see what was happening. It doesn't change anything. It's just an unnecessary lie. But like, yeah, she got shot while walking through her hallway to see what the fucking commotion was about and just unloaded on. She wasn't even armed. In this situation, it's just an innocent person, but they had a gun. So I guess like it's slightly more understandable why the cops would be on edge, but this is America, and when you're a fucking cop, how often have you seen cops just totally fine with a white dude having a gun? Like, cop pulls over a white guy because he was speeding or had a broken headlight. He asks, "You got any weapons in the vehicle, sir?" He's like, "Yeah, I got, I don't know how many guns I got in here, but they're all legally owned. I can show you my permit, yeah." And cop's like, "Oh, good, man. What's your favorite model?" But the second that a cop sees a black woman in her own home with her own legally owned gun, it's time for bang, 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 bang. And on top of that, let's say hypothetically, there was a break-in. Let's say hypothetically this was a robber who had broken into somebody else's house, not the owner of the apartment breaking into her own apartment because she locked herself out. What if there was a real victim inside the building? One of the 4 cardinal rules, there are only 4 rules of firearm safety that you have to know. Okay? They're like 100 years old at this point. Colonel Cooper came up with them, one of the most revered figures in all of U.S. military history, and they are quite simple. Treat every gun like it's loaded. Always point your gun in a safe direction. Always know what's beyond your target, in between you and your target, and around your target. And, I always blank because I always forget which ones I have said and which ones I haven't said whenever I list anything. Always keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. I think that's the one. Did I already say that? I might have already said that one. I hope I didn't repeat any there. Regardless, four simple rules. You broke one of them there. You broke one of them very clearly there. I didn't fuck it up. Cool. You broke one of the core rules there, and that is knowing what is between you and your target, behind you and your target, or behind your target, and knowing what is to the sides and adjacent to your target. They were unloading on a house that presumably was just being mugged by somebody who had a gun, which meant that if there was like an innocent person in there who owned the house, in their view, who is in danger, they put that innocent person who could have been in danger by doing it the way they did. Even from their perspective, if they 1,000,000,000% had every reason to assume this woman was a threat, they still would have threatened the lives of this hypothetical, non-existent, innocent person who had their who was being robbed, and that the cops were supposedly supposed to save. Right? They shot 100 rounds into the apartment and missed. Yep, cops aren't good shots. I hope the victims in this apartment sue the shit out of this police station and the 2 female cops who just unloaded mag after female cops. Yeah. Of course, they mentioned female cops. Mind you, no mention of the fact that they were male. It was a male cop whenever the, ironically, there was a mention of a female cop that kept getting brought up. And that was when the other cops started shooting after the male cops started it with the acorn thing. Funnily enough, no one mentioned that guy was a male cop, but they specified a lot that the other cop that was shooting the car was a female cop, a lady cop. So let me get this straight. Cops are called about a break-in intruder. They arrive at the scene and see a broken window. Then they see a person in the apartment approaching the door holding a gun. Shots fired, and people are saying the police are wrong? How? Absolutely phenomenal. Innocent person in their own home gets shot 5 times after 100 shots are fired at them, and somehow it's okay and nothing wrong happened, and the cops deserve no punishment whatsoever for shooting somebody because supposedly... Zane, I think a lot of that is just cognitive bias where people just assume a cop is a man. Could be wrong, though. No, I think that's what I'm talking about, though, right? Like, it stands out. Like, it's not even worth mentioning to these people when the cop's a guy. Like, they just say, look at this dumb cop. But when it's a lady cop that does something bad, now it's a lady cop issue. Obviously, you've got the people who just mention lady cop, weirdly enough, and just don't just say cop. But then there's also the constant weaponization of this to say that men are better at everything, including law enforcement, than women, despite the fact that a man just did something way more embarrassing and worse a week ago. The first thing would be to announce that they are law enforcement from a distance and allow the occupants to respond and disarm. Firing blindly into an apartment is wrong. What happened to the 100-plus rounds that went into the apartment? They need remedial training at the academy. They should have asked her to identify herself before opening fire. Due to cops literally being executed and being attacked over and over, I'd see this as 2 women that wanted to make it home and they panicked, but can anyone really blame them? So this is a conservative comment. You usually start with drop the weapon and then show me your hands. That's a good comment. Police do not have to announce they are there. They were approaching the door. They saw the busted window, observed a person with a gun. Could have been the burglar they was called about. The person could have fired at the police once they knew they was there. Shoot before killed. So just absolutely justifying. So like you've got a mix of people that are just criticize, obviously like lefties, progressives that are generally just criticizing the behavior of these cops here and they're not being sexist about it. Then you've got the people that are saying this is why women shouldn't be cops. And then you've got the people that are saying they did absolutely nothing wrong. Even though this is a woman who legally had her own gun in her own house and they shot 100 times into her apartment and shot her 5 times. They're like, nope, they didn't do anything wrong. They didn't do anything wrong. No, you shoot first, ask questions later. That's how our cops should do things. With all these cop executions happening lately. By the way, there's this weird trend of conservatives. They've been saying this for like over a decade, by the way, where they have this like imaginary fantasy where cops are being executed across the country. Have you seen this? Have you noticed this? Like this person said it word for word. Like they have this imaginary fantasy where like criminals are executing cops with like headshots and just like mowing cops down across the country. it's really weird how like it's a fantasy. There are not like mass cop executions happening across America at the hands of criminals, but it's this fantasy they have to justify cops being trained to shoot first, ask questions later. Regardless, though, it really is just despicable to see how much like power cops have to just do this and then get nothing but administrative leave as punishment. Like, simply the fact that they shot somebody who is totally innocent should be all that is considered when it comes to whether or not they continue to do this job. Once you've literally shot a civilian who is totally innocent and broke no laws, you're done. You don't get to be a cop anymore. I don't care what situation happened. You should not be allowed to be a cop anymore. You should be fired, and frankly, you should be criminally investigated. All three of these women should be criminally investigated, and I believe what they committed, well, I don't know if the woman who got shot died or not. It didn't say in any of the tweets here, but if she died, they should be charged with manslaughter. And if she didn't die, they shot her 5 times. They should be charged with first-degree assault. That's what I think. I don't know if murder, because murder requires intent. She lived? Yeah, first-degree assault then. Yeah, this is assault. This is first-degree assault and assault and battery, and it should be charged as such. Like, or attempted murder, maybe. I think, well, but any murder charge has to come with intent. That's the thing. I mean, obviously we all agree it's murder, but legally there has to be intent for it to fly in court. So maybe assault with a deadly weapon? Yeah, in turn, that's a really good one. Yep, that would probably be what would fly in court, assault with a deadly weapon, if there was ever any charges, which there won't be. They'll just be put on administrative leave, which is literally just a paid vacation. Listen, guys, you do not want cops to be the only people in this country that are allowed to have guns. They've clearly demonstrated they should not be the ones in charge of determining, the life and death situation. As much as I hate to say it, I think morally, once those cops start unloading on that woman in her own house, I think morally that woman would have been totally in her right, certainly not legally, but morally in her right to shoot back to defend herself. She didn't a single time. She had a gun and resisted I'm sure, resisted the instinct to shoot back at the people shooting at you. I'm sure she realized they were cops when she saw the sirens, the lights, and all the screaming and stuff. And she just took the shots, took cover, survived it, and managed to make it out. Thank God. But she would be the one. This innocent woman would be the one spending her life in prison if she shot a single round back at these cops. If this woman shot a single round back at these cops, she would already be well on her way to prison for a very long time for attempted murder against an officer. They would throw the whole kitchen sink at her. She's a black woman who had shot back at a cop in this scenario. They would have destroyed her life. And despite that, she would be under the jail. And despite that, for self-defense, legal self-defense, and despite, well, not legal, but, morally justifiable self-defense. But she didn't do that. Thank God. So, worst case scenario is she has been severely hurt, and these cops get a paid vacation. I hate to say it, but that is at least the worst case scenario here. Hopefully that's not what happens, but we know how it tends to go in this country. Cops don't tend to face consequences for this kind of thing unless there is enormous amounts of outrage. Like, enormous amounts. Like, Derek Chauvin would have totally gotten off for the murder of George Floyd if it hadn't been for the movement. Guarantee it. If it hadn't been for the movement, he would have gotten off for that shit. Like many, many cops have for the same fucking thing.